Hey, it's Keisha. Welcome and welcome back. We're on our next reading in the Aquarian. It's chapters 158 and 159. So let us begin as we do by closing our eyes and just feeling our seat in its seat. Just take deep breaths in, beginning to collect yourself from all points of time and space. Call all of your power back to you. Just keep collecting yourself into your whole. Just feel the eyes gently drawing back into the center of the head. Bringing your head back over your shoulders in a more relaxed posture. And feel your cares and concerns and worries, intrusive thoughts just fade away. Feel yourself whole in your truth, the truth of yourself. And now see a column of white light gently come down over you. And breathe in that light. Feel it filling you from inside out. With each breath, you're becoming one with the light. Feel your matter lightening as you become one with the light. Feeling complete, whole and light. Begin to lift up in that column. Lifting up out of earthly consciousness, releasing earthly tethers, coming back to your space of peace, of oneness, of knowing. Surrounded by support, surrounded by source. Breathe in the truth of your being. That you are spirit, triumphant over matter. When you're ready, gently open your heart, open your mind, and open your eyes. Chapters 158 and 159. The morning of the Wednesday of the week was come, and Jesus with the 12 went to Olivet to pray, and there they were lost in prayer 7 hours. Then Jesus called the 12 close to his side and said, "This day the curtain parts, and we will step beyond the veil into the secret courts of God." And Jesus opened up to them the meaning of the hidden way, and of the holy breath, and of the light that cannot fail. He told them all about the book of life, the rolls of Raphael, the book of God's remembrance, where all the thoughts and words of men are written down. He did not speak aloud to them. He told them the secrets of the masters in an undertone. And when he spoke the name of God, there was a silence in the courts of heaven for half an hour, for angels spoke with bated breath. And Jesus said, "These things may not be spoken out loud. They may never be written down, They are the They are the messages of Silenceland. They are the breathings of the inner heart of God. And then the Master taught the 12 the lessons they should teach to other men. He sometimes taught in parables. He said, "You call to mind the words of yesterday about the coming of the Son of Man. Now you shall teach to other men what I have spoken, and I am speaking unto you. Teach them to pray and not to faint, to be prepared at every moment of the day, for when they least expect him, the Lord will come." A man went to a distant land, and he left his house and all his wealth in care of servants, 5 to guard the house and 5 to guard his barns and herds. The servants waited long for his return, but he came not. And then they grew careless in their work. Some spent the time in revelings and drunkenness, and some slept at their posts. And night by night the robbers came and carried off the wealth of the house and barn, and drove away the choicest of the herds. And then they knew that much of all the wealth that they were left to guard had been purloined. They said, "We cannot be to blame. If we had known the day and hour when our Lord would come again, we would have guarded well his wealth, and suffered not the thieves to carry it away. He surely is at fault because he told us not." But after many days the Lord returned, and when he knew that the thieves had robbed him of his wealth, he called his servants, and he said to them, "Because you have neglected what was given you to do, have spent your time in revelings and sleep, behold, you are all debtors unto me. What I have lost by your neglect you owe to me." And then he gave them heavy tasks to do, and he bound them to their posts with chains, and there they remained till they had paid for all the goods their Lord had lost through their neglect. Another man locked up his wealth and went to sleep, and in the night time robbers came, unlocked his doors, and when they saw no guard, they entered in and carried off his wealth. And when the man awoke, he found the door ajar and all his treasures gone. He said, "If I had known the hour when the thieves would come, I would have been on guard." Beware, my friends, beware, and be prepared at every hour. And if your Lord shall come at midnight or at dawn, it matters not, for he will find you ready to receive. And then, behold, a marriage was announced, and virgins, 10 of them, were set apart to meet the bridegroom when he came. The virgins clothed themselves in proper garbs and took their lamps and sat in waiting for the watch to say, "Behold, the bridegroom comes." Now 5 were wise. They filled their lamps with oil, and 5 were foolish, for they carried empty lamps. The groom came not at the expected time. The virgins were aweary with their watch and slept. At midnight came the cry, "Behold, the bridegroom comes." The virgins rose. The wise ones quickly trimmed their lamps and went forth ready to receive the groom. The foolish virgins said, "We have no oil, our lamps burn out." They sought to borrow from the wise, who said, "We have no oil to spare. Go to the merchantmen and buy and fill your lamps, and then come forth to meet the groom." But while they went to purchase the oil, the bridegroom came. The virgins who were ready with their lamps all trimmed, went with him to the marriage feast. And when the foolish virgins came to the door, it was shut. And though they knocked and called aloud, the door was opened not. The master of the feast exclaimed, "I know you not." And in disgrace the virgins went their way. Again, I say to you, and you shall say to them who follow you, be ready every moment of the day and night, because when you expect him not, the Lord will come. Behold, when he will come with all his messengers of light, the book of life and that of record shall be opened up, the books in which the thoughts and words and deeds are written down. And every man can read the records he has written for himself, and he will know his doom before the judge shall speak. And this will be the sifting time. According to the records, men will find their own. The judge is righteousness, the king of all of the earth, and he will separate the multitudes as shepherds separate the sheep and goats. The sheep will find their places on the right, the goats upon the left, and every man will know his place. And then the judge will say to those upon the right, "You blessed of the Father God, come into your inheritance, which is prepared for you from times of old. You have been servants of the race, and I was hungry, and you gave me bread, was thirsty, and you gave me drink, was naked, you gave me clothes, was sick, you ministered to me, and was in prison, you came to me with words of cheer." I was a stranger, and in your homes I found a home. Then will the righteous say, when did we see you hungry, thirsty, sick, imprisoned, or a stranger at our gates and ministered to you? And then the judge will say, you serve the sons of men, and whatsoever you have done to these, you have done for me. The judge will say to those upon the left, depart from me, you have not served the sons of men. I was hungry, and you gave me naught to eat, was thirsty, and you gave me naught to drink. I was a stranger, and you drove me from your door. I was imprisoned and was sick, and you did not minister to me. Then these will say, when did we thus neglect to care for you? When did we see you hungry, thirsty, sick, a stranger, or in prison, did we not minister to you? And then the judges will say, your life was full of self. You served the self and not your fellow man. And when you slighted one of these, you slighted and neglected me. Then will the righteous have the kingdom and the power. And they who are unrighteous shall go forth to pay their debts, to suffer all that men have suffered at their hands. They who have ears to hear and hearts to understand will comprehend these parables. When he had finished all these parables, he said, you know that in 2 days the great Passover feast will come, and lo, the Son of Man will be betrayed into the hands of wicked men, and he will give his life upon the cross, and men will know that he, the Son of Man, is Son of God. Then Jesus and the 12 returned to Bethany. Bar Simon, who was once a leper and was cleansed by Jesus by the sacred word, abode in Bethany. In honor of the Christine Lord, he gave a feast, and Lazarus was among the guests, and Ruth and Martha served. And as the guests reclined about the table, Mary took a cruse of rich perfume and poured it out on Jesus' head and feet. And then she knelt and with her hair wiped his feet. The odor of the rich perfume filled all the room. Now Judas, always looking at the selfish side of life, exclaimed, for shame! Why did you waste such a costly perfume as thus? We might have sold it for 300 pence and had the money to supply our wants and feed the poor. Now Judas was the treasurer and carried all the money of the Christine band. And others said, why, Mary, what a profligate you are. You should not throw away such wealth. But Jesus said, you men, be still, let her alone. You do not know what you say. The poor are with you constantly, and at any time you can administer to them. But I will not be with you long. And Mary knows the sadness of the coming days. She has anointed me beforehand for my burial. The gospel of the Christ will everywhere be preached, and he who tells the story of the Christ will tell about this day. And what was done by Mary at this hour will be a sweet memorial to her wherever men abide. And when the feast was over, Jesus went with Lazarus to his home. Now, in Jerusalem, the priests and Pharisees were busy with their plans to seize the Lord and take his life. The high priest called in council all the wisest men and said, this deed must be accomplished in a secret way. He must be taken when the multitude are not anear. Else we may cause a war. The common people may stand forth in his defense, and thus pollute this sacred place with human blood. As what we do, that we must do before the great day of the feast. And Ananias said, I have a plan that will succeed. The 12 with Jesus every day go forth alone to pray. And we will find their trysting place, and we can seize the man and bring him here without the knowledge of the multitudes. I know one of the 12, a man who worships wealth, and for some I think he will lead the way to where the man is wont to pray. And then Caiaphas said, if you will lead the way and bribe the man of whom you speak to aid in seizing Jesus in a secret place, then we will give you 100 silver pieces for your hire. And Ananias said, 'tis well. And then he went to Bethany and found the 12 at Simon's house, and calling Judas to the side, he said, if you would care to make a sum of money for yourself, hear me. The high priest and the other rulers of Jerusalem would like to talk with Jesus when alone, that they may know about his claims. And if he proves himself to be the Christ, lo, they will stand in his defense. Now, if you will but lead the way to where your master is tomorrow night, that they may send a priest to talk to him alone, there is a sum of silver, 30 pieces that the priest will give to you. And Judas reasoned with himself. He said, it surely may be well to give the Lord a chance to tell the priest about his claims when he is all alone. And if the priest would do him harm, he has the power to disappear and go his way, as he has done before. And 30 pieces is a goodly sum. And so he said to Ananias, I will lead the way, and by a kiss make known which person is the Lord. And so we have betrayal set. So this is now Wednesday. Still a full day, not quite as busy as Tuesday, but full all the same. We start with the Jesus and the 12 meditating, praying for 7 hours. And then he says to them, on this day the curtain parts, and we'll step beyond the veil into the secret courts of God. So they've been learning and teaching, he's been teaching and they've been learning all this time, and there's still yet these important lessons that must be taught. And he's, focusing now on what to teach men to say after I am gone. Or what to teach he's teaching the disciples what to say when he is gone, and how to be ready, for they know not the hour in which the Lord will come. And notice he says the hour that the Lord will come, not that I will come, right? Because people have this conception, this idea that, the second coming of Jesus, it's going to be Jesus as we see him here coming back to lead the multitudes. And here he keeps saying the Lord. It is the office in Christ within ourselves that's coming forth. Not him, the person, but all of his teachings that we have taken in being expressed from within out. So he talks about he's going to open up the meeting of the hidden way, of the holy breath, and of the light that cannot fail. Oh, that's it. I had a thought about a prayer that we could do, and I'll try to remember to put it in the description box. But the prayer that we are the light that cannot fail. The light that cannot fail is within us. We need to meditate on the light within, because that light cannot fail. There's lots of ways that you can incorporate that statement into a prayer, and I recommend trying that for a week or two and just see how it feels and how it expresses in your world. Again, we get talk of the book of life, the book of God's remembrance. This is the Akashic records, where all of man's thoughts, words, and deeds are recorded. And, he tells us that we will have access to our pages as they are recorded. And that's just a matter of meditating on gaining access to the Akashic records, and to be shown that which you can see. I love the poetry of the messages of Silenceland and the breathings of the inner heart of God. Those seem like the innermost, the closest and most tender, and choicest thoughts, and where we would want to be in the silence land. Okay, so in the last video where we were talking about Jesus is telling them to be ready, right? And I said, you want to be ready, like remember the parable of the husbandmen and the parable of the 10 virgins. Well, when I was telling you about that in the last video, I was thinking that we had already read that. But then it turns out like those 2 parables are in this section. So I apologize for that confusion there. But so now we come to those 2 parables here. And so it's interesting, the parable of the 5 guards and the 5 servants, and then the parable of the 10 virgins, the 5 foolish and the 5 wise. The repetition of the number 5 here is important because 5 is the number of change. We are about to experience a very big change, and his whole message in the teaching of the parables of preparation is that we need to be ready, because that's how you staying ready is how you meet change successfully. So yeah, with the parable of the 5 guards and the 5 servants, they stopped doing their jobs, and so they stopped growing, and then find themselves in bondage, right? With the you can't be ready if you haven't been doing the work. With the 10 virgins, the 5 foolish and the 5 wise, theirs is more about being a spiritual marriage and being in connection with your spirit consciousness and being ready for revelation when it comes, when the bridegroom comes, right? And so if you aren't regularly practicing and keeping oil in your lantern, then you won't be ready to receive revelation and insight because you're not ready. The vessel isn't primed. And then the one parable in there that I had missed from before, the parable of the man who slept, and while he slept, no one was on guard, and they came and took away his wealth. We can't stop progressing in spirit consciousness, right? There's a constant commitment that we have to make. And so, there's oftentimes when we say move into our promised land, we make our master demonstration and everything's going good and we're really enjoying it. We slack off and kind of forget the practices that brought us to that moment, because then we feel like, okay, we made it, so we don't have to work that hard in that way. And so we kind of get away from ourselves. And it's that case of, I'm not going to be fed by my flowers. I have to feed myself the resources that actually make flowers grow, right? So as I feed myself of water, of air, of sunlight, the byproduct of taking in those resources is a beautiful flower. Right. So we have to remain in commitment to our practice in order to be ready. And we can't fall asleep or slip back into our old patterns lest we lose the gains that we made. So he talks about the sifting time. It sounds kind of ominous, right? I mean, it's ominous in that it seems finite, but I mean, it's kind of sweet in that it's the sheep and the goats, and the sheep will be called into their inheritance, and the goats will not be known. And again, according to the records, men will find their own. Again, that's a meditation on the Akashic records. You could find what is there for you and ask to be shown those lessons. Separating the sheep and goats. I had some other notes here. So after the separating of the sheep and goats, he talks about how how you treated the poor, the hungry, the sick, the imprisoned, is how you would have treated me, and so by that token, you would also be judged. And if you remember back earlier, we had that how you will be judged on how you served and how you made, you were made to, the ways in which you were made to serve, the ways in which you use the thoughts of God to serve the ethers of eternal, and how you made the ethers of eternal love. Wait a minute, let me get this straight. But by the ways in which you use the thoughts of God and how the ethers of eternal love were made to serve. Yes. I'll have to go back and look and see what verse that is. I couldn't find it in the quick search, but yeah, like that we're judged by our service. And if we remember in the last section, we had the greatest man is he who serves. We move into him finishing that section by telling them that in 2 days' time, the Son of Man is going to be glorified. The Son of Man is going to be betrayed. And then we move into the feast, and everyone's kind of reclining, and this is where Mary anoints Jesus' head and feet with the costly perfume. Naturally, Judas is all in a tiff and calls her out on it, and everybody else kind of piles on, and Jesus is like, no, hold on, wait a minute. You don't know what you say. She knows the sadness of the coming days, and so anoints me before my burial. Intuition knows. Mary knows the sadness of the coming days, right? And then we skip to a scene with the Pharisees and the scribes and Ananias and Caiaphas coming together with a plan by which they will talk to somebody in the group of 12 that Ananias has identified. We know that that's going to be Judas. And they offer up 100 pieces of silver if they will point out Jesus, when they're able to, if they're able to take him while they're alone, away from the multitudes. Interesting that, Judas has always caught so much flack for selling out Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, but we don't realize that the priest actually had 100 pieces set aside, and Ananias was cunning enough to take 70 for himself. So an indication of just how corrupt he is, right? He's going to skim off a bribe to kill somebody. And also, if somebody's coming to you and offering you money to do something, ask for more money, right? And then that chapter ends with, by a kiss they'll make known who is the Lord, right? So, story's moving along. I'm feeling the sadness of the coming days. Anyway. I will love you all in the meantime until we meet again with the next reading. Ciao.